Meeting call to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Albro,
Present.
Ms. Calderon,
Here.
Mr. DeCosta, Ms. Dunn,
Here.
Ms. Coffinger,
Here.
Mr. Luna,
Here.
Ms. Ryan,
Here.
Vice President Gomez,
Here.
President Andrews.
Here. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In accordance with the provisions of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law, the New Milford Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted in the Borough Hall and the New Milford Public Library. Notices have been sent to the Record and the Twin Borough News. The board announces that under its long-standing policy, it will not discuss in public any comments made by members of the public concerning individual staff members. At this time, please be advised that all cell phones and electronic devices are to be turned off. Meetings of the board are open to the public and all members of the community should feel free to participate. Before coming to the board, the chain of command should be followed. There are two portions of the meeting reserved for comments from the public. The first at the beginning of the meeting for agenda items only, and the second at the end of the meeting for other items. Issues raised by the public may or may not be responded to by the board, but all comments will be considered. The board requests that all members of the public be mindful of the rights of other individuals when speaking. Due to confidentiality and legal rights afforded by the state of New Jersey, members of the public are asked not to speak negatively or in a derogatory manner about any employee of the board or any student. As outlined in New Milford Board of Education Bylaw 0167, each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 2 minutes. I make a motion to open to the public for items on the agenda. Can I get a second? Seconded by Stephanie Coffinger. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And since there are no comments from the public, I make a motion to close to the public. Can I get a second? Seconded by Nicole Dunn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, at this point, we have a presentation, Spring 2022 Statewide Assessment Report.
Good evening, everyone. I'm excited to share this information and this data with you tonight. It has been some time since we had performance report to share, particularly from the NJSLA, or the New Jersey Student Learning Assessments, as our last administration prior to the spring of this year was back in 2019. And then, as you know, we took a pause and we did some alternate assessments, so it's nice to kind of get ourselves back on track and take a look at the assessments that we are used to and that we have some historical data from. So I tried to streamline it this year. I know that we always have a little bit of difficulty looking at the numbers on the screen, so you do have a copy in front of you. And I did bring a laser, but the laser seems to cut off on the screen. So I apologize. It works, but it's not showing on the screen. It might have something to do with. So I will do my best to walk you through and explain what you're looking at. So I want to start with English Language Arts. And first we're going to look at a comparison of New Milford's performance to statewide. Across the top of this table, there are 5 performance levels, beginning with 1, not meeting expectations, and moving all the way to the far right, which is level 5, exceeding expectations. The first 3 columns are not meeting benchmark. Okay, so we're not meeting expectations, partially meeting, and then approaching, kind of like right below the benchmark. Levels 4 and 5 combined would show all of the students who are meeting or exceeding. So in the first column, if you look, there's a yellow underneath district. All of the numbers or percentages are outlined in yellow. That's district performance by grade level compared to state performance by grade level. For the first 3 columns, we want the district percentage to be lower than the state average, because that means that we have fewer number of students who are not meeting the benchmark. In columns, or the levels 4 and level 5 columns, we want those percentages to exceed the state percentages, because that means that we have more students meeting or exceeding benchmark as compared to the state. So I'll walk you through, just for an example, in grade 3, we have 9% of students in not meeting compared to 20% in the state. Partially meeting, 9% in the district compared to 16% in the state. Approaching, 11% in the district and 22% in the state. The following slide takes those last two columns, all of the students who are meeting and exceeding, and combines them to show you students who are on or above benchmark, and compares it to the state average. Students in grades through 3 took the English Language Arts assessment. And here, for those visual learners or readers, are some graphs to help you interpret the data. So here, your eye should go to the green bars. The light green and the dark green show meeting and exceeding. We hope, and based on this, this graph, those numbers exceed the number of students who are below benchmark across all grade levels. On the top, we have New Milford. On the bottom, we have New Jersey. Okay, something that we share with you each year is our participation rate. We arrive at the participation rate by taking the number of tests that were administered and dividing them by the number of eligible test takers. So at the bottom, the overall, we had a 99% overall percentage rate for the English Language Arts NJSLA, which is very good. Okay, Mrs. Ryan, I feel like this slide was created for you.
I love it.
Actually, not this one. I'm sorry. It's coming.
It's coming.
And
Just kind of
contrasting colors so they're not blending like last time.
Yes, I'm trying to do. So here's your historical performance. So we're looking at 2018, 2019, and 2022. Again, there is a gap from 2019 to 22 because the assessment was canceled because of COVID. But these are this year's data compared to the two most recent years that we had historically. So the column in yellow shows you each of the levels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, compared to what those levels look like in our last administration and then prior to that in 2018. I will show you on the next slide, the assessment was different in 2018. It was PARC.
Oh, yes.
Oh, and it's important to note here, we're looking at grade level performance, so it is the same grade, different students. On the next slide, Mrs. Ryan, this is your slide that you was asking about. Here we're looking at the same group of students and how they tested in different grade levels. So the first row shows students who took the grade 3 NJSLA in ELA in 2019 and recently took the grade 6 NJSLA ELA this past spring. The column all the way to the right shows these students, these cohorts, proficiency, combining levels 4 and 5. So those are the students who are meeting or exceeding. Now, if you're just looking from top to bottom, their most recent performance in the spring is the last number that you see. So these students that I just spoke about in grade 3, there was 68% proficiency. In this past spring, 69% proficiency. Considering the pause that we had and the disruption that we had to instruction, that is quite remarkable. really down the line here for all of these different cohorts. The most data that we have is the last row, where these students tested in 2016 taking the park. That was in grade 3. And this year, or last school year in the spring, they sat for grade 9. In grade 3, there was 59% proficiency, and in the spring, we had 73% proficiency. Now, it's important to remember the variables. Students who were with us in 2016 may have moved out of district. We may have had new students enroll in the district, so the actual cohort or students enrolled in the cohorts could look different. Obviously, there's a change in the assessment, not only each year, but we had the change from the park assessment over to the NJSLA, and of course, the disruption with COVID and everything that played into that. Okay, now I'm going to move on to mathematics. Okay, so first we're starting by looking at New Milford's performance compared to state, and this is laid out exactly how it was shared with you for English Language Arts. District in the columns and the boxes outlined in yellow compared to the state performance. Again, we would hope or are looking to see that the first 3, levels 1, 2, and 3 numbers are lower than the state average, showing that we would have fewer students who are not meeting benchmark. And our goal is for students in levels 4 and 5, or those last 2 columns all the way to the right, to exceed the state average. Looking along the far left column going down, we had the math assessment in grades 3 through 8. There are 2 rows for Algebra 1. Some students in 8th grade take Algebra 1. We had 25 students last year take the Algebra 1 assessment in grade 8. And then the one below that is our Algebra 1 test takers at the high school level. And also we had geometry, students who sat for the geometry assessment. Here we're looking at the, just to simplify it and make it a little bit easier on the eye, levels 4 and 5 combined, district compared to state. You can see we have exceeded the state average across all grade levels and all assessments. But there is always work to be done, and you will hear more about that in a few minutes. And here's the bar graphs that show the same data, just in a visual way. So again, we're looking at the light green and dark green, showing our students who are meeting or exceeding. The top is New Milford. Below that, you are looking at New Jersey, statewide. And again, great participation rate. We took the number of tests administered in mathematics, divided it by the number of students who were eligible to take the math assessment, and came up with an overall 99% participation rate, which is excellent. Okay. Here we're looking at same grade, different students. So this is showing us achievement and growth for across grade levels, but different cohorts of students in each of the grade levels. Historically, 3 years of performance, beginning with 2018, the 2019 administration, and our most recent, which was in the spring of 22. And here we have the same students, different grades. So this is the historical performance for your cohorts of students as they're progressing through the grade levels. The column all the way to the right is showing us combined performance, and the column to the left is showing us the year and the assessment that the students took. Now,
The last line, is that middle school or high school?
The very last line is,
Says
oh, I'm
middle
sorry, that's
school.
high school.
Yeah, that's
Good,
supposed to
good
be high
eye.
school.
Wow.
That's high school.
Nice job, Tony.
So above that, the
Think you have
third
to do
row
that.
down, where it's 100%, 100%, 100%, those are your students in middle school who are taking Algebra 1. Those are, an advanced population of students who are advancing through our math courses at a faster pace. So we would expect higher proficiency for that cohort of students. This data, although, it differs from what we saw in English language arts, it is in line with what we have seen in the past and really reinforces all of those interventions and supports that we've put in place in the area of math.
Is the high school and middle school Algebra 1 test the same?
Yes, it is.
Can
Good
I-
question.
So just looking at those numbers, like, look at that, if you look at that 80% number, the third grade Park 2017, I mean, 80% exceeding expectations, like,
Can you
That's
tell
the
me which
cohort.
line you're
It's the
reading?
middle, it's the ones that have
Okay,
the
so it's the
algebra track.
2017 grade 3 Park, third row down,
Yes.
yeah.
80%.
So, cause like, what I'm looking at is like underneath that, right, that you get the 2016 grade 3, and that's 6%.
It's different groups.
That's a different group of students.
I get
So
it.
I'm just gonna,
I know that it's a different group of students, but what I'm saying is, how is it that 80% number is so much more overwhelmingly higher than everything else?
those are your advanced, those are your students
They're
who are,
broken out.
who are taking a more, advanced track, like, they're moving into Algebra 1 at the middle school level,
Right.
when the majority of the population doesn't take Algebra 1 until they reach the high
Right,
school.
So
what
the
you
one
said with the
above it-
100%, what you were alluding to with the 100%
Correct.
number. But what I'm
so
trying to get at
you're
is, do kids move into that group?
Mm-hmm.
Because like you see on the bottom part, there it goes 65100, and that
The
another
percentages.
cohort.
Correct.
So I'm curious if it went down to 0 with exceeding expectations, because any of those kids moved to,
Tony, did you want to add to
I
his
I was just gonna
question?
ask, looking at it, if I can assist in the clarification.
Yes,
The
please.
1, 2, 3, fourth box down, which leads to 2022 Algebra 1 middle school, and you go backwards, 19, 18, 17. Though, that's one group of students that in 2022 were in Algebra 1 middle school. The preceding box is the same grade level, but it's the students that didn't end up in Algebra 1 as 8th graders.
okay?
Right, so third box down says 2017 grade 3 Park. They had 8% exceed expectations. Those are all the students, I'm guessing,
Yes.
that aren't in Algebra 1 last year. I'm guessing that.
That's what I said.
And you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Tony, for that clarification.
It's just reported separately.
Okay.
But it,
And the last row, that's my error, that should be 22 Algebra 1 high school,
Yeah.
Not middle school.
NJSLA. So those kids didn't take Algebra 1 at the middle school level, those kids took it at the high school level.
And with 15% or 16% of the state 8th graders passing the test, and we had 41%, the non-algebra kids, the 8th grade math kids, that's phenomenal
Kudos.
compared to the state. That's the state's problem, that it's only 16% passing, however.
And that's why we draw the comparisons to the state averages, and one of the things that we are always looking at. And not only at the number of students who are meeting and exceeding, but also the number of students who are below benchmark. And we wanna kinda look at the flip side of it and see that we have fewer students. Okay, science. And then once we get to the end, I'm gonna ask Dr. Chrisomalis and Ms. Genley to talk about some of the interventions and things that we're doing, so we'll take more questions. Okay, so here we're looking at the science assessment, which was only administered in 3 grade levels. It was administered in grade 5, grade 8, and grade 11. And this has 4 performance levels rather than 5. And we're looking at levels 3 and 4, which would be you're meeting benchmark and exceeding, or proficient and advanced. Now this information, the data that we're looking at does look slightly different than the other content areas. We have prioritized English language arts and, our growing readers and English language arts and literacy across all grade levels, as well as math, especially in the remote learning environment. So we're not really surprised with science. Here we're looking at the percentage proficient compared in the district compared to the state. And here is the visual for you. And we had, again, on the science assessment, a 99% participation rate.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Which science is at grade 11? What do they get tested?
It's just the NJSLA for grade 11.
So like, because in high school, they can take biology, then chemistry, then, but, so like, what is?
Course, the core science.
It's
content.
just a general core?
It's not a specific,
Okay.
it's aligned with the NJSLS, the standards. Okay, so here, we always share the demographic analysis by subgroups, and we look at race and gender and program. So we're gonna begin by looking at race, and we'll go through English, language arts, math, and science together. So first we have our race subgroup, and we're looking at English language arts. The distribution is by achievement level. The color code at the bottom shows on your far left, red, not meeting. I don't know, orange, salmon, partially meeting, yellow, approaching, and then your greens are meeting and exceeding. Okay, and here on the next slide, we have math. And science. Okay, and then I'll look at gender. First, we're starting with ELA, and we're comparing females to males. There weren't really too many discrepancies or differences here. And math, the number of meeting and exceeding for both male and female was pretty much in line with one another. And science, exactly 20% proficient, which is interesting how that worked out. Okay, and now program. So when we talk about program, we look at our students who are identified for free and reduced lunch. We're looking at students with 504s. We're looking at English language learners. On there it's ELL. We're looking at our special ed population. And then to the far right, we have the gen ed population. It's important when looking at this data to know that there are different supports in place for these different populations and in each of these programs. So our English language learners may have more intensive supports during the regular school day as opposed to the students sitting in the general education classroom. The students falling into the special ed program all have individualized education plans or IEPs. So every student's schedule may have different services and supports tailored to their specific or individual needs. And then here we have the same subgroup program by math. And then science.
Wow.
For those of you who are parents and families who may be viewing this presentation. It will be added to the website, so you will be able to go back and look at these slides more closely.
Does the state have a comparison as well to the subgroup?
I don't think so, but I can look. I don't believe so. They really just,
Yeah, like
I
they
can-
compare the group, but not broken down like this, but you have to report it like this, so I would feel like they should
yeah,
be able to return back something.
I'll look into that and get back to you. Okay, so in addition to the NJSLA, which is our big assessment in the spring, there are additional assessments that some of those specialized populations take. One of them is the Access for ELS, or an English language proficiency assessment for English language learners. These students are combined in clusters. So we have a kindergarten cluster, a first grade cluster, second and third grade is combined, fourth and fifth grade is combined, sixth through eighth or a middle school level is combined, and 9 through 12 is combined. This isn't like a new Milford thing that we combine these grade levels. This is statewide, and this is how the students are learning when they're working with their English language instructor. So you could see the levels across the top differ from the performance levels of the NJSLA, but I included a brief descriptor there that kind of tells you a little bit more about what's expected at each of those different performance levels as students are acquiring the English language. Lots of times we have students who come into the district and we identify them as port of entry, meaning that they have 0 English. And that can happen. When we think of like a 0 proficiency or no proficiency, we tend to think of like kindergarten or in our earlier grade levels, but we have students coming in the middle and high school level with no English, and therefore, just at that entering level.
Do you have any idea why, I'm sorry, do you have any idea why that fourth to fifth grade cluster is so high and the bridging at 78, whereas there's 3 others that are, like, that just seems so off?
I mean, it didn't draw my eye, but, we have individual reports on all of the students. There's many factors that go into it as far as like how long they have been in the program, what services they are receiving. It's important also to note that our English language learners programs may differ. So students in one particular language may receive multiple periods of ELL as part of their regular program, as opposed to students who speak other languages. So there's many variables too, and that's really the important thing, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more when you're looking at all of this data. This is a single snapshot, right? It's giving us one moment in time, and it's really not telling the whole picture. So I'm hoping that we can add a little bit more to that picture for you, or at least share with you how we put that picture together. And then the DLM, or the Dynamic Learning Maps, is an assessment for our special education population. The DLM is administered in the same content areas as the NJSLA. It is a different assessment. It looks different, and there are different supports in place for students taking this assessment. The performance levels are also, the labels are different, but pretty much telling us the same thing. Students that are on target, or meeting benchmark, and exceeding. Okay. So this is kind of the best part of this presentation always, because this is when we really get to highlight some of our notable achievements and all of the hard work that we have been doing across all grade levels in all of our schools, and really talk about, oh, I have a typo in here, I'm sorry.
Oh.
You know, and it's like I look at one word and it pops right out at me.
Oh, I see.
I'm sorry, yeah,
We
don't
might
say it
have
out
caught
loud. And fix
You're gonna
that.
fix it while we're talking.
I didn't
is
do
that what
spell
you're
check,
doing?
but I'll fix it before I post it on the website. And then we talk about some of the different interventions that we put in place and what our next steps might be. All of these different achievements and our ongoing initiatives and interventions really are hitting one goal, and that is increasing the rigor to improve teaching and learning and ultimately helping raise student achievement. So I kind of put that in a banner across the top because that really drives all of the work that we're doing and that we continue to do. So as you know, in August, we approved all of the revised curriculum, which is now aligned to the 2020 New Jersey Student Learning Standards. You might be saying, well, why, it's 2022, and why didn't that happen sooner? That was delayed, and that work was being done, but it was just rolled out differently as per the state revised timeline because of COVID. So now we're in a place where all of the curriculum across all content areas is aligned to the 2020 NJSLS, with the exception of English language arts and mathematics. Those standards are currently under review, and we anticipate up for adoption later in this school year. We haven't received any additional information on that. But I put in there the term educational equity, and equity might be a word that you're hearing a lot in the educational arena, if you will. But it really, when we think about curriculum and we think about aligning it, we're making sure that all of our courses are aligned to the same standards so that the instruction, even though it may look different with interventions that we put in place for specific students, the overall program is the same from one classroom to the next and from one school to the other school across town. So we're really kind of getting everybody on an even playing field, setting the stage where everybody is on the same page as a beginning place for meaningful instruction and learning to happen. The curriculum development for the high school math courses, I mentioned earlier that math has been on our radar for several years, and it is an area where we are continuing to grow and improve. I will invite Miss Ginley to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But those courses were written at Conquer Math this summer. So Conquer Mathematics is where we send our teachers for professional development with a consultant, Nancy Schultz. She works with lots of districts across northern New Jersey and is kind of like the guru and the expert and has seen and done it all. So she invites teachers in, we kind of like roll up our sleeves, and we, it's really important work because it's not something that's given to us and then we roll out to our students, but our teachers go there with our student data, our historical performance, and then work with Nancy to develop a program of study tailored to our specific needs. So that was a really important highlight that I wanted to share with you. Also this summer we launched at the end of June when the teachers let out or the students went home for summer break, we kept our K-3 teachers in district for 3 days to take part in a comprehensive Project Read training. And Project Read is our reading program that fits into our balanced literacy framework in K through 3 in both of our elementary schools. And it includes phonics, phonemic awareness, phonics, and really just kind of adds those other pieces to make it what balanced literacy is, right? Literacy is not just reading and writing. There's many other components that play into that. So the initial training for Project Read actually happened when I came into the district, which was 10 years ago. So it was some time since we had that formal training, and we've had a lot of new teachers, we've had a lot of changes in assignment. So we thought it was a good use of ESSER money, which was the grant funds that were provided for COVID, to retrain our teachers in these foundational literacy skills. So that, again, we're kind of getting everybody back on that same page, and we're making the instruction equitable across all of our classrooms. The year-long professional learning continuum, which is supported by our district calendar, that's something that we have done every year. It unpacks those collaborative team meetings that our staff members participate in on a weekly basis. Dr. Chrysomalis worked with me earlier this summer to develop, and the entire leadership team, to develop a comprehensive calendar that would support, and we call it like this continuum, because there's a really intentional sequence or progression to this learning that we are involving our faculty members in throughout the course of the year, beginning with our very first faculty meetings in September. Dr. Chrysomalis, would you like to, can I invite you to speak a little bit more about the calendar and kind of join in?
Yeah, so it was exciting to do this work with Lauren at the beginning of the summer, because it was based on all the data that we had collected in the district throughout the months, I would say from January to June, when we did our learning walks with all of the administrative teams, and we had conferences with teachers, and we asked them about their wants and their needs, and we met as a group to debrief about all the observations that we saw. We visited close to 60 classrooms in all 4 buildings, and it was exciting to see and to have conversations about where our needs were, where our strengths were, and what we needed to do. So after gathering that data and compiling it, we created a roadmap. And the roadmap really set the stage for creating this year-long plan. So we're excited for it. It is a lot like the other trainings in that it is a return to a back to basics. So talking about what does a good lesson plan look like? What does it have to include? What is the arc of a lesson? What is differentiated instruction? So these are all things that our teachers know, but have identified that they would like some more support so that they could become more masterful. And so the learning is targeted. And what's really interesting is that we unpack this as a team, and then I work with the principals before their faculty meetings, and then we talk about all the resources we're going to provide them, and we're able to kind of lay out the work for the liaisons and the LALs to do with their peers and their colleagues in PLCs, which is really a best practice. So it isn't a top-down mandate, like this week we're going to talk about this. This is, you told us you needed help with this. Here are the resources we came up with. We are the experts as the instructional leaders. Come to us for support. We'll teach the teachers, and they'll teach their teams. And it's really working out very beautifully because we're all having the same conversation. And I think that banner that Lauren put up there is really so perfect, because it's intentional for all the conversations that we're having everywhere, after observations, in our pre-observation conference, in our post-observation conferences, and in all these Monday afternoon meetings.
Thank you. Okay, so in addition to the Monday meetings, we also have professional development that happens, that's woven into, it's not all outside of or after the school day, but it's woven into the regular school day. And one of the new components for this school year is an intervention specialist that we brought in, who is working K-12 across all of our school buildings. This work is also funded through ARP ESSER, another one of the grants. And her work with our teachers is helping support the continued implementation of a multi-tiered system of supports. So what do you mean by multi-tiered system of supports? So I have referenced Linkit in the past as a benchmark or a universal screening. All of our students take that assessment. It gives us a general baseline on or a pulse 3 times a year. But then we go a little bit further, and when we unpack that data, we're regularly identifying students who are in need of additional supports, beginning with the most or least restrictive. Those supports happen in the classroom, during reading workshop, or during, in the Algebra 1 classroom at the high school. And that small group instruction is a place where teachers are able to provide these interventions. There's multiple layers. So we also monitor and identify students who may need like a more intensive intervention and pull students out for small group work or work with some of our reading and math specialists. That work typically happens outside of the classroom. Sometimes the specialist pushes in and works with a different group of students. And then we look at like our highest tier, or tier 3, which is a more individualized support, or the most intensive, where we look at increased frequency and or duration. So maybe it's happening more often, the support, or it's happening for a longer time. And when these students are working in these different small groups, our teachers are continuing to monitor their progress over time. So there'll be brief, quick assessments that give us an indication of if the student is making progress and they're on that the trajectory, intended trajectory of growth, or if they're not. And that tells us if they're not, we need to change something. And if they are, then we can move them back into, pull away some of these extra supports that they were giving. So anyway, the consultant that I mentioned is a guru. This is her area of expertise. She's not really, she's well-versed in all content areas. Her expertise really lies in that intervention arena, not necessarily like an ELA consultant that we've brought in, or math consultants. So we're really excited about that work. And it's really nice to see that work happening in 6 through 12, because historically when we've talked about RTI, it's always been an elementary initiative. We're really trying to step outside of that box and move this kind of work across all grade levels, because it definitely is meaningful and it definitely serves a purpose. Math professional development through Conquer Math. Shana, do you want to talk a little bit maybe about some of that PD and what we're doing, even
Sure.
with our consultants who are coming in?
Absolutely. So when we have teachers new to our district, we send them to Conquer Math to get trained either in a program like Everyday Math, Connected Math at middle school. Sometimes we send them just to learn the grade level content, so it might not be program specific, but what does a kindergartner actually need to learn in kindergarten? How are you going to teach it to them? So we do that work every year. We have a couple more teachers this year, as we haven't sent teachers in the past because of COVID, the past few years. So we do have a few more teachers attending that this year. But in addition, at the very end of last school year, we had one teacher from each grade attend Conquer Math in, I think it was May or June, to reflect on the school year as a whole and to look to see what resources we need more of, and use Nancy and her expertise to help the teachers with that. Think about pacing and how many days and how do we get to where we want to be at the end of the year. And they were tasked with speaking to their teams and talking to their colleagues, but we did send one person at the end, from every grade at the end of the year, to go work with Nancy on that. We did mention that the high school teams went and they totally revised their curriculum over the summer, which was phenomenal. And they too walked away with the day by day. High school's a little different. There's not a program like we have Everyday Math or Connected Math. The teachers being the content experts, we developed that with Nancy. And so all of the teachers walked away with, on day 1 of Algebra 1, this is what we do. on day 2, so and so forth. Another thing that we do in district, and we actually have her coming this week, Thursday and Friday, to the high school, is we have a math consultant, Dr. Tori Bonacorso. She's been working with us now, I believe this is her 3rd year, and she's really, the teachers really appreciate her because it's more like job embedded. Instead of sending our teachers out and leaving their classrooms, a lot of the work with Dr. Tori happens in their classroom. So for instance, this week she's going to be facilitating peer observation. So the teachers are going to be released, some of them will be released to go and observe another teacher, and then we have a conversation. What did you see? What did you notice? What can we learn from the experts in our building? We'll talk a little bit later about building teacher leadership, because all of this really is dependent on our teacher leaders. So I'm trying to see if there's anything up there about math. We also have Title I supports in ELA and math. Sorry, Lauren, I'm jumping in here.
Okay.
Title I supports in ELA and math. We expanded that last year to include the high school. We're going to be continuing with that this year. So we also have, I see on there, we have our learning platforms. The elementary students love Dreambox, and we have that again. The middle school is using IXL, and I think there could be pockets at the high school of students that are using IXL as well. So we have a good combination of programs and curriculum, but also online platforms that kids can use independently, in school or at home.
Shayna brought up a really good point about bringing the consultant into the classroom. We really try to do that as much as we can, because then we're able to have our teachers work with these professionals with our students. And I think that's really important, because lots of times we send teachers out for specialized workshops, but it's not really tailored to what the teachers are encountering and working through every day when they're meeting with their kids. So if they have a challenge, or they have a question, or they want some feedback in a specific area, they're able to have the consultants work with them and tackle it together. It's a really nice model. Another thing that I had put up here was our expanded co-teaching assignments. So Dr. Perot has been working really hard to expand the co-teaching assignments across grade levels, so that we are pairing general education and special education teachers in the same classroom, making that a least restrictive environment, really supporting student growth in the classroom setting. That has been very powerful, and we're really excited to see more and more of that happening across all of our buildings. Like Shayna had mentioned, we also have ELA staff developers who come in and do the same kind of work with our teachers in those ELA classrooms. We had the K-8 Responsive Classroom Institutes. We spoke a lot about responsive classroom. Those are also ESSER funded. A lot of this professional development I mentioned is ESSER funded. It was a great way to utilize those funds. And of course, we continue to do learning walks across buildings, as Dr. Chrisomalis had mentioned earlier. So I just want to kind of drive this home with, earlier I had talked about, the data that we're looking at being a single snapshot and a moment in time. And one way, and I always think of it this way, it helps me really kind of build a better picture, is thinking of it as like a snapshot versus a scrapbook. So a single piece of data only tells one moment or one picture or one story. But when you begin to take many pieces, and pieces that may look different, and they're not all photographs, right? So not all the same type of artifact, then it really starts to put together a comprehensive picture for each child. And each child's story looks very different. So it's by putting together that scrapbook and really making that story come alive that's helping us tailor the supports that we're giving to help increase rigor, improve teaching and learning, and therefore, raise student achievement across the board. I know this was a lot, thank you. I'm gonna open it up for questions. I will post this on the website, and if anybody at home, of course, has any questions, they can email me as well.
Thank you, Lauren. That was excellent, and thank you, both of you. Do any of the trustees have questions for Ms. Odoxta?
I have 17, no, I'm just joking. I whittled it down. I have some questions, I'm just gonna narrow them down. Okay, so, and forgive me, I'm not a teacher, so some of these, terms are new to me, so I just wanna get a full understanding. Mathematics, so page 13, we talked about levels 1 through 5. What are the levels exactly? Like, how do you identify what the levels are, just because those percentages are so different? So is there like a way that those cohorts are defined?
Did you say page 13?
13, yes.
Yes, so each of the performance levels has cutoff scores
Okay.
that correlate to, are you looking for the cutoff scores?
No, I meant like, that's what I mean. You
Yes.
actually answered my question.
There's
So
cutoff
it's the
scores.
levels as far, okay,
Yes.
all right.
And if you're a parent at home, on your child's ISR or individual score report, the actual number is on the report.
Okay,
Comes on the,
all right,
comes
yeah.
on the.
Okay, so that's that one. On 17, as far as science, so that obviously, you were mentioning that we focused mostly on, mathematics and English, language, which is fair, obviously. At what point, I guess, do you kind of shift? Like, do you start to focus more on science at some point? Not more, but, just more in terms of science as opposed to
So we're not pushing science
Yeah.
to the side. I think what we're looking at is not surprising to us, just because we have, the programs that we have for science in the district are very hands-on. Students in science are always working on investigations or labs. We talk about science kits, and they're doing experiments, and then there was a disruption.
Right.
And I think that's one of the content areas that was really affected by the transition to remote learning, because all of that was kind of taken away. There were simulations. It's not the same, right? Dissecting a frog on the computer versus doing it in person. So we know that the learning the instruction and the learning looked different for a little bit, so it wasn't surprising to us. But it still is an area that we continue to focus on because we have this data. So our science teachers are unpacking the results. They do some of this work on Mondays in their teams, and then they are building that plan of action.
And you know what, that's fair. I remember, I think you talked in the last assessment that with virtual learning, science was probably
yeah.
going to suffer.
But I think that's a good thing in a way, because I think our students, when they're with us here, we are learning in the best way to teach science. It is not, and if you speak with our science teachers across the district, we don't want our kids reading from a textbook or, off of a computer screen. We really want them digging up their sleeves and kind of learning by doing.
Okay, I'm going to cross out two of them. Port of entry students.
Yes.
Okay, that's a soft spot for me because I was a port of entry student coming into New York when I was, in my 4th grade. What are we doing? Are there any special programs that we do for them as far as increasing kind of that, that gap that they're going to have as far as English language?
So our English language, our ELL teachers are phenomenal in the district, and they work very closely with all of our ELL students and our Port of Entry students, most often going above and beyond for these kids. So they will go above and beyond, asking for additional resources, translators, different books in their native language that would help them in their classroom. They work with their classroom teachers. There may be increased frequency and duration of their ELL periods with these teachers. So it's very individualized and specific to each student, but there are many additional supports for our Port of Entry students.
Before you move on to your next question, I have a question that might add to that, because I am a teacher. And I noticed that while it was pretty equal, our ELL students actually performed better in ELA than they did overall in math. But a lot of people don't realize, people at home or people who are not in the schools, the math questions, correct me if I'm wrong, are a lot of tricky word problems that even native speaking students have difficulty with. And is that has that been considered?
That is something that we see, and not only are they language heavy, they're multi-step, right? So you have to like, read and comprehend, and then, solve a problem in order to unpack the next layer of the question.
Yeah.
So it is very challenging.
So I was actually impressed at how they performed with that as well as the ELA part. Continue to your next questions. I just hope that helped you to understand that part of it. Yeah.
I'm crossing out, don't worry.
You're up to 18.
Taking my lawyer hat off, I'm sorry. Okay, so then my other question was, you've done these subgroups, which are awesome, right? So you broke it down by race, and then you broke it down by gender. Is there a way, and you know, might not be included here, that you're able to identify the subgroups by like classroom, and the only reason I ask that is because, so if I understand educational equity in the way that you describe it, is that everybody's kind of on the same plane, right? They're on the same base as far as what they're learning and teaching. So to the extent that you can identify students in certain classrooms, maybe with certain teachers that are maybe not performing as well, to the extent that you can do that, that kind of leads to my second question, is that can you then do like, you know, targeted professional development to kind of maybe address some of those gaps, you know, where you think that maybe that student or that classroom might not be.
Okay, so we do look at achievement we can break it down by classroom. That is something that we look at. And differentiated supports is also something that we do.
Can I
To
ask
support.
something, because I'm
Oh,
gonna,
yeah.
again,
I'm done.
or add something to that. No, I'm saying to what you just said.
Chair recognizes Mrs. Ryan.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
The data that we're seeing is rolled up.
Right.
The data that they look at is what you're talking about, just not reported to
Yeah, that's
public
what I meant. I
class. Because
figured
then
that-
people would go, oh, well, I'm in this class and who's
Yeah.
this? Right, so, right,
Yeah.
true, fair enough, right?
No,
it's all-
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
so-
not publicly shared, but it is
That's
very
what I assumed,
helpful.
I just wanted to.
Mhm. And like, you know, we differentiate for our students, we differentiate for our staff.
All right, see, I'm done, prosecution, yes.
There we go. Are there any other questions from trustees? Mrs. Ryan, did you have your hand up, or
Nico,
Tony?
No, you probably have a more.
Not really,
A
but-
better question.
Would we, I mean, going back to Cheryl's point about ELLs, when we look at the table or chart for ELLs, I mean, it seems like there's a possibility of many students having exited the program based upon their scores and other measures.
Yes.
Do you have any idea of the ratio or percentage of students that, as a result of their test scores and other measures, are now exiting from the
I
program?
could share, I could
Okay.
get those
Because I mean,
numbers for you.
some of the grade levels
That's
are
important to
phenomenal.
mention. So that's also a very fluid program. You know, I did mention the students who come in with no proficiency, but then we also have students who are proficient and meet the criteria for exit. So the state gives us certain criteria, they are able to meet those scores, and then they're exited. Now, once they're exited, they're not forgotten about. We continue to monitor them for 2 years. Our ELL teachers track those students, and then should we see something concerning, we can pull them right back in for additional supports. It's kind of like that monitoring piece that's very helpful. Okay, I think this is telling me that I talked too much. So thank you
Paige, had a
for,
question. I'm sorry, Paige had
yeah.
a question.
It was more feedback and then a question, which was thank you for having that comparison of same student, different year. Because I think that is, especially with the pandemic and things shutting down and students, that's where someone might look to say, where was the learning loss, right? Even though this is just one piece of your scrapbook you were describing, right? So this is one, so thank you for doing that, because I think that does help in terms of comparing apples to apples-ish. Park is in there, so it's still not really 100%. But I did appreciate that, because I think that's very helpful. And then also all of the things in that last slide that you had there with everything that Carrie and Sheena had said, and all of the supports that you're doing and all the things that you're building. There's a lot going on just in these first few months. So the question is, as we go into the rest of the year, a lot of this is now gonna start to take shape, right? A lot of the learning that they've done. So what is the, oh, I feel like I can't even look at it, I'm getting stressed. What is the, because we're not gonna do this now until next year again, right? This particular type of testing, and you have all of that. Are there things that you're looking at with some of those programs you did already? You know, that you,
Like Lauren shared, we do progress monitoring. So yes, and I think you're exactly right. We're hitting a stride now. Like we started off with a bang, we did the trainings, we were thoughtful, we were purposeful, we had a calendar, things were rolled out very smoothly, and now we're getting into the thick of things.
Right.
So we are now, if I'm not mistaken, just finishing up collecting our first benchmark data sources. And so now the administrators will analyze that data. Jane and I and Patty and the principals will have conversations specific to teachers, to students, and yes, and that's work that will be ongoing throughout the year. And I think that the beauty of all of these things that we have in place is that it's giving us a pulse on the children in the moment. And that's really the best time to step in and do an intervention, move someone on, bring someone back. So it's an exciting time, but yes, we are doing that.
yeah, great.
So,
Just
just
really
wanna
appreciate all
add
of
in,
that.
you're very lucky, because you're gonna have a lot coming. We also just finished Start Strong assessment that was, we were required to take this fall. That just wrapped up. We have immediate feedback on that, but the scores are not published yet, so once those are available, we'll be sharing those out. We have the fall benchmark that Dr. Chrismales had shared, and I will also be sharing the NJGPA data with you at an upcoming meeting. That was the graduation proficiency assessment.
Right. And I just want to say thank you for minding your printing costs.
Just saying, Mr. Watson. Yes, that's pretty good, right?
Mine's at 11 cents.
Is it really?
Paperless.
I don't coffee a lot.
In fairness, I send my stuff so I don't get caught.
To someone else, right? Yeah.
Chair recognizes Mr. Luna.
So Ms. Odoxai, looking at everything that you just presented, was there anything that stood out to you as an area that's an opportunity for us to, I won't say improve, but maybe improve? Like, is there something, not something that's necessarily deficient, but is there something that stuck out to you that is an opportunity for us to
There's always
excel
room
maybe?
for improvement.
Always.
Of course.
And,
But something specific, was there anything that caught your eye or not?
I mean, math continues to be a priority. Do you want to answer that?
Sure, yeah. So when we were looking at the data, I'm thinking of specifically the high school team, we noticed that a lot of our students were right on the cusp of being proficient. So if a 750 is proficient, we had a handful of students in each grade that scored anywhere between, say, a 740 and 749. So those were the students that we really started the school year off by saying, what can we do for those students? Because they're almost there. That could have been just like one question, it could have been 2 questions, it could have been half of a point, something like that. So I know that's what really stuck out to me is that, yes, we're meeting and exceeding, we're doing okay and we're happy with that, but there's room for growth. Where is that growth most likely going to come from? By shifting everybody to the right. And the first tipping point is getting those kids over. So I don't know if that answers your question
Totally,
specifically,
that's exactly
that's
what
what
I was-
stuck out
It's
to me.
exactly what I was looking for. Like,
Okay.
was there something that stuck out
Yes.
when we looked at this that said, hey,
The
this
teachers
is
were actually
something
the
like-
ones, when
Perfect.
we were looking at the data, that was the thing that everyone was looking at.
We call them the cuspy kids.
Or bubble students.
And we love it, because we know it's just one question, maybe half a question, and
I think
we
it's
can
empowering for the
Yeah.
teachers to know that
Just think.
these are the kids that just need a little bit.
All right, thank you all very much. It's a lot of, I know that it's a lot of behind the scenes work on all of your parts, so we appreciate it, especially even just putting this together for us to understand in our minds. So thank you very much.
Fantastic, thank you.
We have a superintendent of schools report. Did Danielle review anything, or are we saving that?
So I have her good news to share tomorrow night.
Okay, so, do you have another report
I have
for
another
us?
report. No. I do have one thing that my own, well, our shared good news really that we could share, but we'll tuck it under mine because I do have Mrs. Shanley's report tomorrow. I know that Mrs. Shanley had mentioned or has spoke a great deal about our teacher leader cadre and had shared that she had applied for a team to present down at NJPSA's conference, fall conference in Atlantic City last week. And we had the honor of sending Dr. Chrisomalis and Miss Gimley there to work with a very large group in Atlantic City. And I am hoping that you will share a little bit about your experience with the board, because it was really a great opportunity to share the good work that's happening in our schools and get New Milford on the map.
I have to say it was a wonderful experience. We've done this presentation before. We had done it at the Bergen County Women's Leadership Group. We thought it was a really good presentation because I was able to speak to it as a facilitator, and Shana had been one of our first cohort members, so she's one of our success stories. So as a participant, as a facilitator, we brought along all our resources, our slide deck. We broke it down for them so that they could take away and do it right in their buildings if they wanted to. We were given the slot on the third day, which is not usually a workshop that people show up because by the second day you're family and whatever, and then sometimes you have like 3 people in the room. We had packed house and we were super excited. We actually met a woman who had gone through the New Milford public school systems and now is a supervisor in River Edge. We met some superintendents from Brick and people who asked us about whether or not we used our teacher leader cadre to grow administrators, and we said no, we were committed to growing teachers. And because we believe in the work of empowering others and building capacity within everyone in our schools. So it was exciting. They got to see it. We did some of the activities that we do with one another. But the beauty of it was that unbeknownst to us, there was this thread that kept going through the conference over the 3 days, speaking to collective efficacy. And all the things that we could do to ensure that we made our schools stronger. And this was just a beautiful way to wrap it up because they talked about programs, they talked about processes, they talked about ways that districts came together. And yet we, as New Milford, were able to say, here's a piece where we do with our teachers, and think of how powerful that is. And then we shared with them their success stories. And Sheena, do you want to share like from your
Sure,
point of view? Yeah.
I think the participants, I think they saw that our session stood out from the others because they really came, I felt at least they came to our meeting saying like, what are you doing and how are you doing it? Because I think this is something that a lot of school districts are looking to do. And a lot of them are actually rather large districts.
Yes.
And they had a hard time wrapping their heads around the idea that this wasn't like a feeder program to administration, that you don't need a title in order to be a leader. And to go back to all of the things from that presentation, in order to make all of that happen, we need teacher leaders in every subject area, in every grade. So I think they kept asking us, like, so everyone became an administrator? We're like, no, that's not the point. We need the teacher leaders in kindergarten, we need them in first grade, we need them in phys ed. So they had a little bit of a hard time wrapping their head around that, but after listening, they kind of were able to hopefully go back and process it. We did have a couple of people asking to come visit, and so we're looking forward to that. What else I'm trying to think.
It was really exciting. It really felt proud to be there at a conference that is a statewide gathering of all the educators, and to have something so unique. Because a lot of the sessions were similar. Like we said, we go to this one, we go to this one, and there were these kind of like interloping threads throughout. But ours really was the only one that was focused on building capacity, starting from, not that the teachers are the bottom, but the foundation. So it was really beautiful, and they were super excited. I would say the principals in the group really were excited to take it back. They wanted our decks, they wanted our readings. And I will say that one of the last slides because Danielle helped us put this slide together in a way that would be appropriate for this setting. She had shared a piece with us that I'll share with you, if you like. It was an excerpt from something from Margaret Mead talking about culture and how do you know when a civilization is formed. And it starts out by saying that, is it when you know, if in the animal kingdom, if an animal gets hurt, they die, they become prey, they can't defend themselves, whatever. And so how do you know civilization begins when you find an animal that may have had a broken bone that was healed? And so there is a connection there that some of the animals in their family, their pods, whatever you may call them, took care of them. And that was why that animal was able to, that's the beginning of a civilization. And it's really beautiful. When you read it, you almost cry. You're like, oh, that's us. You know? But there was this real sense, and you felt it in the room. Like, I think at that point, we had them. Before that, they were all very skeptical. And we read that, and we showed Simon Sinek, and we talked about Brene Brown, and we had books for them, and it was really a great day with a lot of feedback, and it made us proud to represent New Milford that way, because I think it is unique.
The best compliment was at the end, people kept saying that they were leaving feeling so inspired and so motivated, and I think they even called us warm and fuzzy. Like, you both are so warm and fuzzy, which I took as a compliment.
So it was a good day. So thank you for letting us go. It was fun. But I think, it was a nice way to represent all the great work that goes on here every day. Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah, thank you. I know that was a great opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're actually going to skip back to the superintendent report because
I'll have the good news tomorrow, but I have
Mrs.
some
Shanley did
business for
share the
tonight.
HIB report
Forgot.
and a couple of
Oh.
reports to be reported.
Sorry.
Oh, I noticed.
Sorry,
I
I tossed
She'll
it.
save part of it for tomorrow, but we do have to report out the reports.
Okay, so, for HIB, we had one investigation in the high school, one investigation in the middle school.
Wait.
Oh,
Sorry, I need the numbers. You're going too quick.
I'm sorry.
HIB.
HIB,
yeah.
one investigation.
No, did you have the number?
Tracking number.
You have the
Oh,
HIV investigation?
yeah, where is that? I made my notes ahead of time that I could read, I didn't know how to put the number on there.
We'll come back.
Is that something that could be updated tomorrow, or it has to be reported out tonight?
We could go back.
Do you want
It's
the-
just for
do you
track,
take
it's a
the student
tracking,
ID or
no, it's a
state?
tracking number, investigation tracking number.
Incident number?
Yes,
Okay, 235
that's it.
128 underscore.
No, that's all.
Oh,
I need.
okay.
There it is, Lauren, you were just doing too well. We need
Okay.
And then you had one at the
Um,
middle school.
One at the middle school, let me get you that number. Sorry, I would've wrote that on my notes. I don't see a tracking number for this one. Can you leave that one
Yeah,
without
that's
them?
fine. Was the high school confirmed, unconfirmed?
No,
Not
0
confirmed?
cases confirmed, neither were confirmed.
Okay.
And no elementary?
No elementary,
Okay.
0, 0. Okay, I'll get you, I'll have to look for that tracking number, I don't know that one. And then the suspension report. So we had, and I don't know what information you take for this.
Just regular.
Okay.
Thank you.
We had 2 suspensions in the middle school. 2 students each received 1 day of out-of-school suspension and 1 day of in-school suspension. And then the school self-assessment for determining grades under the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights Act. Bear with me on this one. For the high school, for element number 1, HIB programs, approaches, or other initiatives, we scored a 14 out of 15 points. Element number 2, training on the BOE approved HIB policy and procedures, 9 out of 9 points. Element number 3, Other staff instruction and training points, 15 out of 15 points. Element 4, curriculum and instruction on HIB and related information and skills, 6 out of 6 points. Element 5, HIB personnel, 9 out of 9 points. Element 6, school level HIB incident reporting procedure, 6 out of 6 points. Element 7, HIB investigation procedure, 12 out of 12 points. And HIB reporting, 6 out of 6 points, for a total of 77 out of 78 points for the high school. For David E. Owens Middle School, Element 1, 15 out of 15 points. Element 2, 9 out of 9 points. Do you want me to repeat the titles again, or are you okay with the element number?
I'm okay with elements.
Element 3, 15 out of 15 points. Element 4, 6 out of 6 points. Element 5, 9 out of 9 points. Element 6, 6 out of 6 points. Element 12 points. Element 8, 5 out of 6 points, for a total of 77 out of 78 points. B.F. Gibbs School, Element 1, 15 out of 15 points. Element 2, 8 out of 9 points. Element 3, 15 out of 15 points. Element 4, 6 out of 6 points. Element 5, 9 out of 9 points. Element 6, 6 out of 6 points. Element 7, 12 out of 12 points. Element 8, 6 out of 6 points, for a total of 77 out of 78. And Berkeley, Element 1, 15 out of 15 points. Element 2, 9 out of 9 points. Element 3, 15 out of 15 points. Element 4, 5 out of 6 points. Element 5, 9 out of 9 points. Element 6, 6 out of 6 points. Element 7, 12 out of 12 points. Element 8, 6 out of 6 points, for a total of 77 out of 78 points.
Does that conclude your report?
That concludes my report.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Kuchar, do you have a report for us?
I'm gonna save mine for tomorrow because it's not warm and fuzzy.
Okay. Agenda items for discussion. Review of the tentative agenda for regular meetings to be held on October 19th, 2022. Review of board action. Review of educational programs and curriculum.
I just have a comment. I think it's great that the Holocaust program is starting up and they're doing that trip and the presentation again. That'd be great.
Yes, that's exciting. Review of personnel recommendations. Review of finance. Review of facilities. Review of athletics.
Just a comment to all the volunteers.
Yes,
That's great.
thank you to the volunteers.
All, I think they're all graduates of New Milford, I think.
A few that weren't, but yeah.
Sage, Katie, Kevin, Andrew, so maybe one. The rest are.
A review of ad hoc bylaws.
Oh, I have a comment. Okay.
I just had a question in general, like with the agenda. I noticed that there's a bunch of coaching appointments, but one of them is open for boys basketball. Is that something, does anybody know if?
I actually have that answer, because I
Okay.
asked it, I emailed ahead of time and asked that question. But do you want to answer? Am I?
You could answer it.
Can we answer it though, that because the person hasn't been right?
So not specific to a person.
Yeah, I'm just asking in general if we have somebody, if we think we're gonna get that
Wait,
filled before
you're
the
asking
season.
about the assistant.
And that's the position
It says
that's open.
CBD.
Oh,
I think, do you want to follow up with Mr.
Yeah.
Woodham to answer that
Yeah.
question? The person hasn't been right.
Okay.
All right, additional
I-
board,
maybe
yes,
that's
oh, I'm
something.
sorry, you had a question too.
That's okay. No, not a question, it's a comment.
A comment.
So on and I know I was kind of emailing back and forth, and I don't know if you got it before, but, so
Yes,
on.
thank you for that.
On the bylaws, there's one that's not on here now, so if everyone can make sure that they look.
It's
0145
is on.
Oh, I'm looking at the,
It was printed before.
So, 0145, and then, so did you make, I didn't even look at that then, did you make a change to the notes?
I didn't, nothing is on the printed copy, the changes are on the tentative.
Okay.
I didn't put before, I understand where you're coming from, I didn't put it,
You don't have to put anything before, I was just pointing
Okay.
out which ones were which, that's all, you don't have to actually do it the way that I sent it. So basically, this is it, so on these bylaws, some of them are just being presented for readoption, there's no revisions. We just reviewed them, made sure that they were correct, and as long as they are, we just wanted it to be readopted because it was many years for some of them. So that's all, so they all say revised, but they're not all revised. So that's why I wanted to make sure that it's clear, before you get it for then. So if you're looking at it this evening, or you look at it before, 110, 120, 131 are all just are up for readoption. 133, 142, 142.1, and are up for readoption. Then 145, which isn't on the printed, but it's there. 146, 148, 151 are just up for readoption. 153 and 161 are just up for readoption. And I say that because you can look at it and just look at it. For all of the others, there have been some updates. So a suggestion that I have for you, if you want to see what the update was, is the committee minutes are supplied to you here. There's a link to our working notes. When you go to the working notes, you can actually see, you can click on the bylaw there, and it'll show you what was highlighted or where we noted as a committee there was an addition or change gonna be made. Because in the ones that you have linked in the agenda, those are the final ones. Right, so if you wanna see. But in terms of those, I can tell you now, because I printed it out for myself, you can look at our working notes to see what we might have noted for it. For instance, if it was a change to align with the Strauss's bylaw, or if there was a change, for instance, on the high school student representative to the Board of Education, we had not specified grades 9 to 12, it was like 7 to 12. We don't have 7th and 8th graders in our high school. So we wanted to change it to align with New Milford, so that's a note there. So you'll just see that. Otherwise, if it's in yellow. So I wanted to point that out to everyone, because as you're looking through this, there was a question about one of them. And so this way you can really look at it and understand what, as a committee, we didn't make any changes to, and what we did make a change to. So you can kind of pop around in that. I wanted to make sure you were clear on that. Because by looking at it, you would think they're all revised, and you would spend a lot of time bouncing around in some of them. And then on all the others, they were just updated to align with Strauss Esme, except for a couple which you see in the notes. So that was really all it. I just wanted to have everyone look at that. There is still, so 20 more of those bylaws that we need to go through. And because of different school activities, and now we're going, workshop is next week, and we have the meetings this week, so we'll pick back up again after workshop and go through the remaining list that's on there. So
Paige, thank you for that.
that's all.
I did read through all of them. It was quite the read. So you guys were busy, and I am that one who asked the question. So and your reply to me made perfect
That's
sense.
good. Okay.
So thanks for bringing that up to the group as well, in case anyone else was questioning. Yeah, thank you.
So that was it for tomorrow.
And to go back to Mr. Lunam's question, Lauren is comfortable answering without discussing any person.
So we're still waiting on an assistant boys basketball coach. I think the confusion was, there's a volunteer for the boys basketball coach, but we're still waiting to name the coaching appointment.
Yeah, my question was really just, do we expect to have somebody in that role prior to the start of the season?
We're hoping so.
Okay, that's it.
Alrighty.
old business? I do want to inform the board, something that's been brought up for, I don't know, even since my daughter was in kindergarten and she's now in high school, the issues of the drop-off and traffic. Mrs. Shanley has been working very closely with Chief Clancy, and they've put cones. I don't know. I'm at work by the time my kids get dropped off. They've put cones, and there has been police presence and oversight. And what's been received from parents is, of course, while nothing's ever perfect, it's been dramatically improved, and it's been well received. And I know that Mrs. Shanley still continues to work closely with Chief Clancy on this, as well as always safety, because safety of the students and the staff is always the priority. And she would have told you that if she was here, but I wanted to bring that up to you guys because that's something that happened between last meeting and this one. So just so the board is aware. Old business?
No, about what you just
Oh,
said.
yes.
So, is the issue with the drop-off, did you say that was at Gibbs? Or was that at?
All schools.
All schools?
All schools.
Okay, never mind.
Okay. New business.
I have a question, but I don't know if I can ask it out loud, so I'll table it.
Okay, sounds good.
I'll table it, it's fine.
Okay. Or if it has to do with that, maybe reach out to Danielle.
Yeah.
Okay. New business. Open to the public. As outlined in New Milford Board of Education Bylaw 0167, each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 2 minutes. Can I get a motion? Motion by Heather Gomez, seconded by Nicole Dunn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And there are no comments from our public. Can I get a motion to close to the public? Motion by Stephanie Coffinger, seconded by Nicole Dunn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Board member requests for additional information. We don't, you know what? Did we, no, stop.
We skipped liaison.
We skipped liaison. Do we have any liaison? You did your liaison.
I basically did mine.
Yeah,
Unless
any
I-
others?
Hello,
Hello.
how are you tonight? Thank you. My update is brief, but I like to think has some relevancy. As everybody knows, next Tuesday is the 4th Annual Domestic Violence Awareness Symposium. On behalf of everyone who is a participating speaker, panelist in each agency, everybody wants to collectively thank you. This partnership is not only important, it's crucial. Without the partnership with this district, with the board, with the police department, none of this would be possible. And as we said before, without the tremendous help from Mr. Creed in the back, who does an amazing job on the live stream, the program would have been canceled a couple of years ago during the pandemic. Many residents have reached out to us in the work up to this program. Many questions we get are, should we attend? Should we watch? My answer is, do that which you are most comfortable doing. If you want to watch a live stream, please do so. If you prefer to attend in person, you're more than welcome. We'd love to have you there. We have this program to inform the public about resources and services that are available to help victims and survivors and their entire family. This year, we're going to open with an introduction from each participating agency about the unique service and resource which each agency can provide. That will be followed by a survivor who will tell her story. Part of her story will include the impact that her experience had upon her young children. To that end, we will also be discussing the impact of domestic violence in the home on children. As recently as last week, as many of you may already be aware, a local area college student, shortly after receiving threatening text messages from her boyfriend in class, went to her car and was kidnapped at night point. This is a very important topic. It doesn't know age, it doesn't know gender, it doesn't know any socioeconomic boundaries. So we encourage as many people as possible to come or watch or listen, learn as much as they can, and please help us continue to work together as a community to help as many families in crisis as possible. It is very important to the agencies to get this information out to the public, which is why they volunteer as much of their time as they do each year for each program, in not only presenting the symposium, but in preparing for it. So, on behalf of everybody who works hard to put the program together, thank you so much from the bottom of all of our hearts. And we look forward, once again, to presenting it in Milford High School on Tuesday night.
Thank you, Mr. Seymour. Can I add to that, as you mentioned how important it is for people to watch, you never know who needs the help. And thankful to Mr. Preet for his recordings. Isn't it correct that it is YouTube? So if there is someone at home who perhaps can't watch it live due to whatever reasons, they can watch it when they can.
Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons why in preparing for this year in the first post-pandemic symposium, we did not simply return to live in-person attendance. We're working just as hard as we did during the pandemic to, just as importantly, present this on a live stream.
And if they, someone's watching at home and they want to know, the link will be posted on the borough website?
Mr. Brigg, the link will be posted.
The link is on district YouTube channel.
Okay.
So that will be streamed on that, and it's also streamed on the borough Facebook page.
Okay, thank you. So
And-
now
and to
everyone at
Mr.
home
Preet's
has
point-
that.
And to Mr. Preet's point, my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is the links will be posted in multiple locations. They will be posted, I believe, on the New Milford, on your district webpage for the YouTube live stream. It will also be posted on the New Milford Police Department's website, and it will also be posted on the borough webpage.
Okay.
What time does it start?
6:30. It's at 6:30.
Thank you very much, Councilman.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else have a question about the program this year?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And it's excellent that it's growing every year and keeping it fresh with new topics, more attendance, more awareness.
And I'd also just with great humility and appreciation, just like to sort of comment that it was also an honor and privilege to be contacted by the New York Giants front office and offered their support this year. They have already been posting our police department's flyer on Giants social media, and they're going to continue to do so right up to the symposium.
I didn't want to put you on the spot about that. I was wondering if you're going to say it.
It was a very nice surprise, and we're extremely appreciative of as much support. And other sports teams as well, and other organizations as well, have also reached out and have offered support in a variety of different ways.
Okay.
So,
Thank you very
thank you.
much. Okay. Do we have any board member requests for additional information? Anthony?
Regarding Mr. Doska's presentation, the 8th grade algebra students in 2022 appears to be a phenomenal group because as 5th, 4th, and 3rd graders, everyone met or exceeded expectations. So my request for information is, if it can be shared with the board at some other time, how many students is that in total? And how many are in our building in 9th grade right now?
Okay, so which page is that?
It's the last year's 8th graders, algebra
Well,
1.
what page is the little number on there?
16. That cohort, the cohort that ends with Algebra 1 middle school and
16
starts
on
with
mine.
17th
Right there,
That's at
grade.
the top.
Oh, okay.
That, that group
Yes, that
has
was
all
20,
met or exceeded
that
every
was
year.
25 kids.
Okay, can we find out how many?
How many are in the high school now?
9th grade, yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
So at this time, the board is going into closed session for personnel. And when we return, we will not be taking action.
Thank you.
Thank
Motion to
you.
go to close.